Hello everyone, my name is Qi Liu. Today I would like to share my experience for doing sewing with you. A few days ago I tried to sew a button onto my shirt. There are some pictures regarding the process I did sewing. First, I draw a spot using pencil. The second step is ladling. After two formal steps, I started to sew. A few minutes later, I finished. After I did sewing, I found that it is not as simple as it seems. Actually, I have never done something like this before. From my own experience, I always think sewing must be a women's activity. Sewing has a very long history according to the worldwide history of dress. Sewing is one of the oldest of the textile arts. In ancient societies, the sewing was defined as a family obligation because the main responsibility of women was staying at home and supporting family. Women had taken almost all sewing work during daily life. Only a few single men had to do sewing in complex situations. Comparing with Asian society, more and more men engage in sewing now. What's more, sewing is not only family obligation but also becomes a new industry regarding fashion. So some men do sewing for life. Interestingly, a lot of famous people who do sewing are men. There are two people who are famous for sewing and designing. Throughout whole history of sewing, I think that the invention of sewing machine directly leads to the changes of sewing. In a brief history of sewing machine, Graham pointed out that the invention of the first working sewing machine generally considered to have been the work of Englishman Thomas in 1790. I think it is a milestone during the development of sewing. Sewing is easier to learn and more likely to use in the field of business due to sewing machine, though that more men chose to engage in this activity. Now I would like to combine with class materials to talk more about my experience. From the class materials of week 2, we know that marriage and motherhood remain the societally approved career for most women. Consequently, the fact that women would do all sewing was accepted naturally by public. In addition, we could know from the materials of week 2, women often use the household obligations as a way to fulfill leisure needs. Sewing tasks provided women with practical forms of recreation. Next, when it comes to doing cross-gender leisure activity, I feel that it is hard to engage in due to culture, like the character of film Love and Basketball. My friends are surprising about that I do sewing. Doing cross-gender activity is still not acceptable in modern society. And I believe that culture must be the greatest constraint for me to do sewing. And I realize the same view with class materials that different types of constraints could all be experienced at the same time by the same person. Interpersonal constraints like others' discrimination and stereotype on men who doing sewing is another reason I have never done sewing before. Finally, I want to provide some reflections. The first challenge for me to do sewing is breaking traditional thinking. In China, the main trend regarding sewing is that mothers taught sewing techniques to their daughters so that few men knew how to sew. Another challenge for me is care and patience. Doing sewing well needs high level of care and patience. And generally speaking, throughout many historical periods, women have been perceived as the weaker sex. I think this would be another reason why sewing was regarded as women activity. In addition, it is not considered as a man's behavior for men to do sewing. Actually, I would not do sewing again. The first reason is that I feel embarrassed to do sewing. The next reason is I'm not good at sewing. The third reason is I can't find sense of accomplishment to do sewing. Finally, what's more, I don't want to change common view on sewing. At the end of the presentation, I provide some references. You could find some more information about sewing from those references. This is my presentation. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much.